In our study of Abraham, we're down to a very important chapter in the Old Testament, Genesis chapter 19. This is the story of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. It is a very emotional story. It's a story that's caused a lot of controversy, and I'm going to take you through. We're going to read the whole chapter, and we're going to talk about it. But first, I just want to talk a little bit about Sodom. Sodom was a notoriously wicked city. Of course, the name tells you what it was wicked for, but that was not the only reason that Sodom was wicked. And in fact, in Ezekiel chapter 16, beginning in verse 49, it says, "Now this was the sin of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters were arrogant," so they were prideful. "They were overfed." In other words, they ate too much. They were gluttons and probably drunks. They were unconcerned. They had no compassion for other people. They were arrogant, or they did not help the poor and needy. They turned a blind eye to the poor and needy. They were haughty. The difference between haughty and prideful, haughty is you're kind of looking down on other people. So arrogant is you're prideful. You really care about yourself. Haughty is you look down on others. And then she did detestable things before me. And of course, the detestable things was sodomy, was homosexuality, and that's what we know as Sodom. And this destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah is a big chapter in the Old Testament. So we know now that Sodom was detestable before the Lord. He actually sends two angels down to Sodom to bring God's judgment upon Sodom and to destroy Sodom. And so we're going to pick up that story in Genesis 19:1. I'm going to go ahead and read the whole chapter. It's a long chapter. I'm going to read it all, and then I'm just going to go back. I'm going to be like a reporter, and I'm going to ask lots of questions. And so I think that will help us better understand this chapter. 19:1. The two angels arrived at Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gateway of the city. When he saw them, he got up to meet them and bowed down with his face to the ground. "My lords," he said, "please turn aside in your servant's house. You can wash your feet and spend the night and then get on your way early in the morning." So obviously he recognized them as angels. That's pretty important. "No," they answered, "we will spend the night in the square." But he insisted so strongly that they go in with him. So they entered his house. He prepared a meal for them, baking bread without yeast, and they ate. Before they had all gone to bed, all the men from every part of the city of Sodom, both young and old, surrounded the house. They called to Lot, "Where are the men who came with you tonight? Bring them out to us so we can have sex with them." Lot went outside to meet them and shut the door behind him and said, "No, my friends, don't do this wicked thing. Look, I have two daughters who have never slept with a man. Let me bring them out to you, and you can do what you like with them. But don't do anything to these men, for they have come under the protection of my roof." "Get out of our way," they replied. And they said, "This fellow came here as an alien, and now he wants to play the judge. We'll treat you worse than them." They kept bringing pressure on Lot and moving forward to break down the door. But the men inside reached out and pulled Lot back into the house and shut the door. Then they struck the men who were at the door of the house, young and old, with blindness, so that they could not find the door. The two men said to Lot, Do you have anyone else here, sons-in-law, sons or daughters, or anyone else in the city who belongs to you? Get them out of here, because we are going to destroy this place. The outcry to the Lord against its people is so great that he has sent us to destroy it." So Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-law, who were pledged to marry his daughters, and said, "Hurry, get out of this place, because the Lord is about to destroy this city." But his sons-in-law thought he was joking. With the coming of dawn, the angels urged Lot, saying, "Hurry, take your wife and your two daughters who are here, or you will be swept away when the city is punished." When he hesitated, the men grasped his hand and the hands of his wife and his two daughters, and he led them safely out of the city, for the Lord was merciful to them. As soon as they had brought them out, one of them said, "Flee for your lives. Don't look back and don't stop anywhere on the plain. Flee to the mountains, or you will be swept away." But Lot said to them, "No, my lords, please. Your servant has found favor in your eyes, and you have shown great kindness to me in sparing my life. But I can't flee to the mountains. This disaster will overtake me, and I'll die. Look, here is a town near enough to run to, and it is small. Let me flee to it. It is very small, isn't it? Then my life will be spared." He said to him, "Very well, I will grant this request too. I will not overthrow the town you speak of, but flee there quickly, because I cannot do anything until you reach it." That's why the town was called Zoar. By the time Lot reached Zoar, the sun had risen over the land. Then the Lord rained down burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord out of the heavens. Thus he overthrew those cities and the entire plain, including all those things living in the cities and the vegetation in the land. But Lot's wife looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. Early the next morning, Abraham got up and returned to the place he had stood before the Lord. He looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah, toward all the land of the plain, and he saw dense smoke rising from the land like smoke from a furnace. So when God destroyed the cities of the plain, he remembered Abraham, and he brought Lot out of the catastrophe that overthrew the cities where Lot had lived. Lot and his 2 daughters left Zoar and settled in the mountains, for he was afraid to stay in Zoar. He and his 2 daughters lived in a cave. One day the older daughter said to the younger, "Our father is old, and there is no man around here to lie with us, as is the custom all over the earth. Let's get our father to drink wine and then lie with him and preserve our family line through our father." That night they got their father to drink wine, and the older daughter went in and lay with him. He was not aware of it when she lay down or when she got up. The next day the older daughter said to the younger, "Last night I lay with my father. Let's get him to drink wine again tonight, and you go in and lie with him so we can preserve our family line through our father." So they got their father to drink wine that night also, and the younger daughter went in and lay with him again. Again, he was not aware when she lay down or when she got up. So both of Lot's daughters became pregnant by their father. The older daughter had a son, and she named him Moab, and he's the father of the Moabites of today. The younger daughter also had a son, and she named him Ben-Ami, and he is the father of the Ammonites of today. Now, there's a lot we could talk about in this chapter. This video could be an hour easily. I'm going to resist the urge to do that, and we're going to do a little bit of an overview. But I want to ask some questions about this chapter, and you and I will kind of discover these together, the answer to these questions. Okay, so I'm a reporter, and I'm asking these questions. Number one, I'm going to ask some questions about Lot. Okay, number one, what was Lot doing in Sodom? What was Lot doing there? Well, if you go back to chapters 13 and 14, you will find out that Lot was in Sodom because he was greedy. He saw the land, he wanted the land, he fell in love with the land because it was fertile and it would make him a lot of money. And so way back in chapter 13, he settled there with his wife and with his kids to build a life there, ignoring the sin. Chapter 13 said Sodom was already notorious for its sinful people in that city. And so it's not like Sodom became sinful after Lot went there. Lot minimized their sin. He overlooked it so he could be there and make money. And so Lot compromised his family for the sake of money. Number two, what was he doing in the gateway of the city? If you'll notice 19:1, the 2 angels arrived at Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gateway of the city. This is very, very important to understanding what's going on in this story. The gateway of the city was where the elders stayed. At the gateway of the city, the elders would meet. They would make judgments or pronouncements for the city. They ruled the city from there. They actually had judgment in cases in the city right there at the gateway. And the fact that Lot was alone, some scholars even believe that Lot may have been the mayor of the city. But if he wasn't the mayor, he was at least one of those elders that stayed at the gateway of the city, that welcomed people to the city, that made decisions for the city, and that made judgments and pronounced judgments on behalf of the people in the city. So what does that mean? That means Lot was not living in Sodom. Lot was of Sodom. See, here's the problem with Lot. The problem was not that Lot was in Sodom. The problem was that Sodom was in Lot. He completely immersed himself there and had become a leader in this city. Now, as a leader of the city, he knew all of the filthy, ungodly things going on in that city. And he he didn't participate in it. Nothing makes us think he participated, but he stayed there. And he went along with it, and he was a leader in it. And he had very, very, very little to do with change in that city. Okay, so he was very, very influential there. Number 3, though, why was he called that righteous man in 2 Peter chapter 2? I'm going to take you over to 2 Peter chapter 2:8. Listen to what 2 Peter 2:8 says. If he condemned the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah by burning them to ashes and made them an example of what is going to happen to the ungodly, and if he rescued Lot, a righteous man who was distressed by the filthy lies of lawless men, for that righteous man living among them day after day was tormented in his righteous soul by the lawless deeds he saw and heard. So Peter says he saw and heard the righteous deeds. He was right there in the middle of it. 19:1 suggests that what? He knew what was going on. He was a leader in that city, but he was still righteous enough. He still understood sin. He still was a follower of God. When the angels showed up, he recognized the angels for who they are, and he tried to protect them. And so Lot had some sort of righteousness in him. Don't know to what extent, nobody knows, but he was called a righteous man by Peter in 2 Peter, although, boy, the evidence from chapter 19 makes you wonder where that is. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that out there for you. So that's the first question, is the questions about Lot. Second, I want to ask some questions to Lot. Number 1, how much influence did Lot, you, have on Sodom? How much influence did Lot have on Sodom? Well, you look through there, and I'm going to say none. I don't see any place where he as a righteous man, as an elder in the city, and maybe even the mayor of the city, had impacted the city at all. There's nothing positive that we see from chapter 19 that would make us think that Lot had an impact on the city. So if he didn't have an impact on the city, then we have to ask another question, and that is, well, what kind of impact did the city have on you, Lot? And the answer is considerable. It had a huge impact on his life. And that's where I want to begin to kind of digest this whole story. Okay, these angels come in and they say, we're going to stay here in the square of the city. And Lot immediately knows, you can't stay in the square of the city. You'll never survive the night. You got to come stay with me. So they come stay with him, and then guess what happens? Before they went to bed. Now, we're not talking midnight or 1 in the morning. You know, the sun would go down and usually they would eat and go to bed. We're talking 9 or 10 at night. I want you to notice what it says here. Before they had gone to bed, all the men from every part of the city of Sodom, both young and old. So how many men surrounded Lot's house? Every man in the city. Every man in the city except Lot is involved in this sin. They all show up at the door, and what do they say? Where are the men you've brought? Bring them out here so we can have sex with them. Send these 2 guys. We want to sodomize these men. We want to gang rape these men right outside the walls of your house. How much impact did the city have on them, on Lot? Listen to what he says. Listen to his response. No, my friends. Lot called these people his friends. He was friends with these very, very wicked men. They had a profound impact on his life. Now, if you'll notice, when he refused to give them what he wanted, what did they say about him? They said, you are an alien and you want to be our judge? That might refer to the fact that he's an elder. You want to judge us when you are an alien here? You don't even belong here. You're not one of us. You're a Jew. You don't belong here. And if you don't do what we're asking and bring them out, we'll do something worse to you than we did to them. Well, what could be worse than gang rape? About the only thing I can think of is death. I think they're threatening his life. I think they're saying, okay, you've come in here and you've settled in here and you've made yourself an elder of the city, and yes, you judge this city, but you're not our judge. And you may think you found a home here, and you may think we're your friends. You're an alien. You're an outsider. You'll never be an insider. And if you don't bring those 2 men out here, then I'll tell you what, when we get through with them, we'll do something worse to you. We'll kill you. I really believe that's what they're telling him here. And yet Lot, in the middle of all this, he's what? he's trying to make peace. Can you imagine how sick Lot's mind must be for him to say what comes next? Hey guys, I'm going to keep these two guys here. What I'll do is I'll give you my two virgin daughters and you can gang rape them all night. How's that for a good solution for this problem? What is going on in Lot's mind? That's where I struggle with this whole thing of Peter calling him righteous. Now, the Bible's always right, and if Peter called him righteous, he's righteous. I'm just having a hard time seeing it in this chapter, okay? Because his solution is gang rape my daughters. And the guys say, we don't want your women. We don't like women. We like men. Bring those two men out here so we can sodomize them. And if you don't, we're going to kill you. We're going to do something worse to you than we do to them. How much influence does he have on these people? Very little. How much influence do these people have on him? A considerable amount. Now, what happens next? This one blows my mind. The angels pull him back in. They blind the people out there. They say, Lot, listen to me. God's going to come. He's going to judge the city. He's going to destroy the city. You need to get out of here. One, they're going to kill you. You need to get out of here. You need to get out of here now. Go get whoever it is you love. Go get your daughters, your sons-in-law, your wife, and get out of here. This is really serious. Lot goes to his sons-in-law. His sons-in-law thought he was joking. Forget it. So now he's got his two daughters and his wife. There's 4 of them. And yet, this is happening at what, 10 at night, 11 at night, maybe midnight? Before they went to bed. I would think it could even be earlier, like 9. I don't know what time exactly, but here's what I do know. The angels say, get out of here, now, go. When the sun comes up the next morning, where's Lot? He's still there. And even when he's there, he hesitates to leave. And even when he hesitates to leave, the angels have to literally, physically grab him by the arm and lead him out of the city. Now just think through that for a minute. What is going on with him? What is wrong with him? You have just been in a situation where your, quote, friends have told you, you're not our friend. You're an alien. You're never going to fit in here. If you don't give us those 2 men to sodomize, we're going to do something worse to you. And then he doesn't want to leave. Even after all that, after being threatened, he doesn't want to take his wife and his girls and run for his life. The next morning, he's still there. The angels have to push him out the gate of the city to get him out of there. How much impact has this city had on you? It has gone down to the core of his soul. It is in him. The problem was not that Lot was in Sodom. The problem was that Sodom was in Lot. Interestingly enough, even then, Lot says what? I'm going to leave. And they say, flee to the mountains. Who's in the mountains? Abraham. Lot doesn't want to face Abraham. So he says, well, if I go to the mountains, I'll be killed. Let me just go further out here in the plain to this little town. And they say, okay, we'll concede that to you, go to the plain. I think Lot in his shame didn't want to go face Abraham. I think Lot wanted to stay on the plain. And then what does God do? He comes down and he destroys Sodom and Gomorrah. Did you notice there when Abraham got up the next morning and he saw it and he knew that it had been burned up by God? And if you'll notice in there, what does it say? That God basically saved Lot because of Abraham. He did it for Abraham. He rescued Lot for Abraham's benefit. So how much influence did Sodom have on Lot? A whole lot. Now, one more story here that I think is interesting, and that is this. They now leave, and then they go up into the mountains, not by Abraham in another place. And his 2 daughters say, oh boy, do we have a great idea. We're going to get Dad drunk, and we're going to sleep with him so we can get pregnant and keep our family line alive because we don't have any men in our lives now that everybody we know in Sodom and Gomorrah has been destroyed. Think about what they had to know about their father. They knew that their father could be easily seduced by wine, right? So, again, that culture had influenced him. Now, the next question is, Lot, how much influence did your culture have on your family? And the answer is same, considerable. They had great influence on their family. Think about it. His two daughters were engaged to be married to men of that city, who, by the way, didn't want to leave and thought it was a joke and got killed, right? So they were immersed enough in the city that they were marrying unbelievers from that city. How much did Sodom influence his family? They didn't want to leave. The angels have to push them out of the city before it's destroyed. And they said, what? Don't look back. Don't look back. And yet what did Lot's wife do? She looked back. And that Hebrew word there meant look back with a longing to return. Now, I want you to imagine this in your brain. It's hard to believe. But Lot's wife, even after all that had happened that preceding night, as they're running out of the city, as they're going away, and they know behind them everything is burning up, she still turns around and longs to be back there, even as it is being burned up. And that's why she turned to a pillar of salt. As she said, I really want to be back there. And God said, okay, you want to be back there? I'll let you be back there. Everyone in that city died. So guess what happened to her? She died with them because that's exactly where she wanted to be. That city had huge impact on her, huge influence on her. And then what about the daughters? Well, the night before, when they were in their house, their father had said what? Take the two daughters, rape them all night long if you want, just don't take my friends. They learned that sick thinking from Lot. Now, it's weeks later, months later, I don't know how long later, they're now living up in the mountains. And the girls have learned the same pattern of thinking that they were taught by their dad. And so they have that same thought. They go, okay, we have a problem. We don't have husbands anymore or boyfriends anymore. Or we have no men by which to carry on our lineage. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to get dad drunk. And we're going to sleep with him so we can get pregnant and keep our family lineage alive. And you think, that is so sick. That's incest. How could they learn to think that way? I'll tell you exactly how you learn to think that way. You live in Sodom. That's how you learn to think that way. Sodom had a huge influence on them. Now, let me say one thing about that story. That story is very, very sick, right? I mean, these two girls get their dad so drunk he can't remember the next day. They sleep with him, they get pregnant. Why was that included in the Bible? Let me tell you why. That older daughter who slept with her dad, and she had a son and named him Moab, and he's the father of the Moabites. Well, the Moabites are in the lineage of Jesus. Because there's a famous woman in the Old Testament that was a Moabite. Her name was Ruth, right? And Ruth got married, and it's her seed that led down to what? David, who led to Jesus. And so part of what the writer here is doing is including this story to help the reader understand where the Moabites came from, because that's the seed of Jesus. And so even in our worst mistakes and the most terrible things we do, what can God sometimes do? Weave His will, and sometimes that will is He's going to use terrible things we do to accomplish beautiful things in the future. And that's exactly what God did there. So, big picture, let me just say this in conclusion of this story. It's a terrible chapter about sin and the consequences of sin and the judgment of God. God judges sin. He will judge it on the day of judgment. Through consequences, He judges it now. And we have to understand that He does it out of love, but He is a God of judgment, and it's coming, right? We have to understand that. But here's what I want you to understand about this story, because this is application for you. Lot and his family went and lived in a culture that was very, very ungodly. And you know what happened? It was a subtle seduction, where day after day and week after week and month after month and year after year, they lived in this ungodliness. And it began to change how they thought and what they perceived truth was, and what they thought was normal, and what they thought was right, and what they think was godly. You have to ask the question, Lot, how do you get to the place that you think a logical conclusion to the city not gang raping these two men is to give your two daughters for them to gang rape? How do you get there? Culture. Culture slowly changes the way you think. It slowly changes the way you process information and what you think truth is. That's what culture will do. And here's what's so interesting to me. So interesting to me, and I'm going to pick on one issue here. Since we're talking about Sodom, I'm going to talk about homosexuality. The Bible's very clear about homosexuality. It's very clear. Go to Romans chapter 1. The Bible calls it unnatural. It calls it an abomination. It calls it sin. Homosexual behavior is a sin. It always has been. It always will be, because that's what the Bible says. So here's what culture does. Starting back in the 80s, they start trying to tell us that this is normal behavior, normal behavior, normal behavior. There's nothing different. There's nothing abnormal about it. And so now here we are 50 years later, and you know what most of culture thinks? It's just normal behavior. So then when someone like me stands up and says, no, it's not normal behavior, it's a sin, we're what? Intolerant, judgmental, ignorant. We're horrible people. Why? Because culture has subtly changed the way we think in our brains, taking us away from biblical truth. It happens in that. It happens in all sorts of sexual arenas with sexual immorality. It happens with the way we perceive people. It happens in every way you can imagine. Culture is always trying to be subtle in changing the way you think, to think the way of the world instead of thinking the way of God. Because there's a way of God and there's the way of the world. Satan is the prince of this world. He is monitoring how they think. And as Christians, we can't think like the world. We can't think the way of the world. We have to think the way of God. And it's always subtly coming in, trying to get us to change, trying to get the way we think changed to be like the world. What does Jesus say? You can be in the world, but you cannot be of the world. Right now, there is a battle going on in your mind and in your soul for, are you going to be in the world or of the world? Because the world keeps on telling you how to think and keeps on telling you how to process information, so that we have a lot of Christians in this country that look at the Bible and say, well, I read it, but I don't agree with parts of it, and the things that I don't agree with, well, it's just wrong. It's just outdated. What is that? That subtle messaging from the world to get you to compromise truth so you will be of the world and not just in the world. What happened to Lot? The Bible said he's still righteous, but what happened to him? I'll tell you exactly what happened to him. The problem was not that Lot was in Sodom. The problem was that Sodom was in Lot. Now, where do you live? I live in Phoenix. The problem is not that I'm in Phoenix, but I have to watch out every day to make sure Phoenix doesn't get in me. I am separate from this world. I am a holy people of God, a holy nation, separate and apart from culture. That's what God has called me to do. And the only way I keep separate from culture is I keep my mind from buying into the subtle seduction of what the world tells me is acceptable. And I always stay focused on what God says in His Word. So that is your word from the day. That's the challenge for your day is, can you live in your community without your community living in you? Let's pray. Father, thank you for our time together in this chapter. And wow, what a powerful chapter, Lord. And I just pray that I was able to communicate it in such a way that we really understand the truth about what's going on in Genesis chapter 19. Thank you for this chapter. Thank you for including it to remind us that the day of judgment will come. Not because you're mean and angry, but because you're loving and righteous and holy and pure. Thank you, Lord, for that. And help us to be men and women of God that are separated, holy, set apart people from culture, and that we protect our minds so that culture will not be in us. Please, Lord, protect us from the mindset of our culture. In Jesus' name, amen. Hey, thanks for watching the video today. God bless you. Have a great day.